Hey kiddos, sorry I'm not with you today. I finally got an appointment for my arm, so that's good news. Hopefully I'll be back with you tomorrow. But I didn't want to miss out on reading with you because we're going through this experience together, and I think it's important that we go through each stage of it together. So hopefully you got a chance to go through the comprehension questions with Mrs. Bradley so your reading brain is engaged and you know what you're looking for. So think back to those as we read the tail end of chapter 8 on page 53. Finally, Julily said slowly, her heart beating so fast she thought it might snap off from whatever held it in her chest. I am going with you, Lisa. I'm afraid and I'm not afraid. Same as you. Okay, now we are page 54, chapter 9. Julily had always looked forward to Sunday on the Henson plantation. It was a rest time from work. Sometimes a preacher came to an empty cabin that the folks called their church. There was preaching and singing. On Saturday nights there was dancing. The slaves went far back into the woods for this, to another empty cabin. Massa Henson didn't mind, so long as he didn't have to listen. There was plenty of ruckus with Lester and Adam playing the fiddles and Ben banging a set of bones. In her hair, Julily wore a red ribbon which Mammy Sally scrounged up for her. She could dance longer than anybody there. But things were different in Massa Riley's place. He wouldn't allow a preacher, and Sims whipped anybody he found dancing. Mostly everybody was too tired and too sickly to care. Sunday was washing day and cooking day at Massa Riley's, so more work, right? On this Sunday, Julily and Lisa sat on the ground near the boiling clothes kettle, beating their clothes with battling sticks. They hadn't been able to talk at all about last night's pledge. Think back to their pledge. What did they decide to do together? Tail end of chapter 8. There were too many people around, and there was too much to do. Julily felt a new bond between them, stronger than just being good friends. It was held tightly by the promise to run away together. It was the most solemn promise Julily had ever made. Remember we talked about solemn being serious and not taken for granted, not taken lightly. A lazy bee buzzed around her head. She reached up to swat it and saw Lester. He looked at her steadily and made a motion that she should join him. He shuffled past her without a word and walked down the dusty path, turning behind a row of cypress trees. Lisa, Julily whispered, something's happened. Lester wants to see me. Hold my stick, I'll be right back. Lester looks upset. Lisa had seen him too. Julily walked quickly toward the cypress trees. Lester was standing behind one of them, impatient and edgy. Julily joined him. I'll talk fast, Julily, he said in his steady, bitter way. So this is his message. Massa Ross from Canada isn't here to catch birds. He's here to help slaves escape to Canada. Oh yeah, there was that inference you made, team. Julily grabbed Lester's arm, but Lester moved away from her. I don't want no one seeing me talk to you. Massa Ross is meeting tonight with some of us in the middle of the piney woods. It's going to be late, when most folks are asleep. Listen for 3 calls of the whippoorwill. Okay, so that's a signal. Listen for 3 calls of the whippoorwill, then walk to this tree. You come and bring Lisa. I'll take you to the meeting. Lester left her, walking fast toward the slave quarters where the young man gathered. Julily returned to the washing, taut and breathless. She whispered the message to Lisa at once. The hunched, bony girl scarcely moved. She dropped the battling stick, which scraped over the dust, a hard, twisted branch of oak unyielding against the constant wax upon the dirty clothes. That stick seems as tough and as skinny as you, Lisa. Julily grabbed it up and began pounding at the clothes. It was no good having the others look at them right now. Lisa was in some sort of trance, so how did Lester's message change her? When she looked up, though, the crippled girl's eyes snapped and danced. They lit up her face until there wasn't a scowl left. And a scowl is almost like sad, deep anger, which, of course, Lisa feels a lot. When she looked, Julily stared. Lisa must be about 13 years old, the same as her. She hadn't thought of any age for this new friend of hers. She'd just seen a worn-out, sullen, old slave face on her, such as many of the other young girls had had. You look happy, Julily said eventually, beating hard with her stick to make up for Lisa's not moving at all. I am. Lisa still didn't move. I thought my daddy was wrong. I thought the Lord had passed me by, but he hasn't. This time I'll have help finding my freedom. I'll have you and Massa Ross. In the shadow-filled moonlight that night, Lisa and Julily lay quiet on their cabin floor. Honeysuckle sweetness in the big house lawn drifted through the open door. Gentle bird calls sounded from the cypress grove. They waited and waited, wondering when the call they were listening for would come. The big girl, Bessie, nearby, twisted about and then sat up to swat a mosquito that circled her head. "Oh, Lord, put Bessie to sleep," Julily prayed. Within minutes, the big girl did sleep. Then they heard it, 3 soft calls of the whippoorwill, swiftly and silently. The girls crept out of the door. They were barefoot, and the hard dirt of the slave quarters made no sound. Lester's shadow spread over the ground near the line of trees, guiding them. As they approached, they could see Lester put his finger over his lips. They didn't speak. Lester started walking fast toward the piney woods and motioned for the girls to follow. Inside the woods, the thick fallen pine needles were soft on their feet. There was no path. Lester meandered dog-like around the tall trunks as though sniffing his way. So to meander is kind of to weave your way through. So that's a visual, right? Picture him doing that. They walked deep among the trees until the tall guarding trunks enclosed them in an open space. Mr. Ross was there with Adam and Ben. "This is Julily, who I told you about," Lester said breathlessly to Mr. Ross. "And this girl is Lisa. She tried to escape once, but got caught. Massa Sims lashed her almost to death." Mr. Ross shook Lisa's hands and then Julily's. Julily hadn't expected this. It was a gesture of friendship. It was like their hands made a bridge. Maybe, with this big man's help, she could cross over it into Canada. Mr. Ross drew the group close together. He spoke directly and forcefully. Julily had to strain to understand his Canadian speech. "Lester has chosen you out of all the miserable slaves on this plantation," he said, "because he thought you were the only ones with the desire and the courage to escape to Canada." "That's right for me," Julily answered gravely. The others nodded their heads. "My conviction is that human slavery is such a monstrous wrong that any measure is justified to liberate as many of you as possible." So what Massa Sims right now is technically doing, remember we talked about this way back, he's technically stealing. So what he's doing is wrong too, but he's saying, I don't care if I'm wrong because slavery is the most wrong thing on earth. So if I have to do something that's wrong to save you, I'm willing to do it. Lester interrupted. "I think these folks should know, Massa Ross, that you were one of those abolitionists who were helping to free the slaves. Think back, what's an abolitionist?" "That's right, Lester." Mrs. Ross's eyes became merry and he laughed softly. "I've been called thief, and in one town in Tennessee a sign was put up which said, $1,200 reward for the apprehension of the accursed abolitionist. That was me." So $1,200 is a lot of money now. It was a lot of money back then. His laugh eased the tension. The circle of sturdy pine trees closed about them like a sheltering arm. Mr. Ross began speaking straightforwardly. "This is a great risk you are taking to escape. Bondage for freedom." Bondage is like the life they live. They're trapped. They can't get away. They don't have their freedom. It would be the antonym of freedom. "None of it is going to be easy. It won't be easy when you get to Canada." He looked at each of them steadily, and in turn they met his eyes with lifted heads. "It takes courage and determination and a good deal of wit." His words were measured and slow. Wit, he's thinking like intelligence. "If you don't think you can do it, I will understand." Julily found it strange just to look in the eyes of a man. How was she going to speak her mind in front of one? She was glad for the night and the darkness that covered all of them. "I'm afraid, Massa Ross, but I don't want to be whipped by Massa Sims one more time." That's like I'm afraid but not afraid, right? "Even a horse shouldn't be whipped the way he whips us slaves. My mommy told me to join her in Canada, and I want to do this. I've got courage the same as she has." "That's so, Massa Ross," Lester added. "She helped me out of the swamp when the chain was round my ankle." Julily was pleased that Lester remembered. She knew Lester, top of page 60. She knew Lester would never stay at Massa Riley's place even if he was whipped until he nearly died. She didn't know about Adam. He was meek and gentle. Meek is when you're quiet. You don't say a lot. He mostly liked to sing, but he had strong arms and a proud head. His skin was as dark as Lisa's. It faded into the night. Lisa straightened her back and stood as tall as she could. "The Lord has been speaking to me, Massa Ross," she said simply. "He says to me, you ain't meant to be beaten. You is woman same as Missy Riley. You ain't no animal. I got eyes and hands and legs the same as she has." Adam was the last to speak. "Until I met you, Massa Ross," he murmured in a soft, easy way, "I figured folks had slaves everywhere." He didn't know Canada was against slavery, and it was illegal, and there was freedom there. Those are noble speeches, Lisa and Julily. You are the kind of people we need. Mr. Ross stroked back his thick reddish hair. The men have already talked with me. Adam and Lester are certain that they want to go. Ben hasn't decided. He drew the group closer together and began giving them directions. They must not talk with anyone else on the plantation about the planned escape. They must meet at the same spot next Saturday night and be ready to leave. Lester would give the whippoorwill call again. Lester would be with Mr. Ross all week getting instructions while they hunted for birds. Lisa and Julily would let Lester cut their hair and dress his boys in the woods after they left. Their dresses would be thrown in the swamp water. So, Mr. Ross do first after meeting Julily and Lisa. Think back to that. He looked them in the eye and he commented on how brave they were. And I think that's similar to why Lester chose Lisa and Julily too, because he knew that they had the kind of bravery, the determination, the grit to really make it. The eerie call of a hoot owl echoed through the tense, shadowy night. The slaves of Mr. Ross took it as a warning that they should return to their sleeping quarters. They parted in 3 directions, the girls following Lester on a zigzag path through the piney woods. Okay, guys, should be close to recess now, and then when you come in from recess, the comprehension questions will be in your Google Classroom for after snack. Okay, see you tomorrow. Bye.